The Blind Tony Story, Book 5, Chapter 3. Lemony Snickets, a series of unfortunate events. That was the title of a Broadway musical about this. It was playing at that time. It was also a good title for my life after I lost my job at the racket club. Maybe it was karma. Maybe I had to pay for something I had done earlier or in another life. Maybe it was the sins of my forefathers. Maybe God was saying, "Can you hear me now?" Maybe. All I know is that, like when that song says, "It all falls down," baby, it all falls down. Shortly after losing my job at the racket club, Casino, who was my biggest cocaine customer, discovered the source of my product and decided to cut me out as the middleman. Then my weed connection, who had rocked me to sleep with over 2 years of very faithful service, decided to rip me off for everything. Lemony Snickets, a series of unfortunate events that left me devastated. By me being the fighter that I am, I liquidated my assets, made a good weed deal, and left once again for the East Coast. When I arrived in Atlantic City this time, Lemony Snickets had already arrived before me. I found North Road, my East Coast partner, in the bathroom, blood running down his arm, syringe in his hand. He was a junkie, an intravenous cocaine user, a modern day voodoo child who would stick himself over and over and over again in an effort to find satisfaction. My hatred of needles gave me a sense of aboveness and superiority, and I started to look down on him. But however, my hatred eventually turned to wonder, and my wonder slowly turned into amazement, and eventually my amazement turned into curiosity, and I found myself one day asking him, "Doesn't it hurt?" And he smiled that smile that only he could smile, and boldly said, "Hell no." I told him that I was afraid of needles, but that I wanted to try it. And I asked him if he could do it for me without it hurting. And the next thing I knew, I had my face turned away and my eyes closed and my arms stuck out. And he did what he did. And he told me it was over. And I opened my eyes. I never felt anything go in, and I never felt the needle come out. And I told myself I didn't really feel anything at all. But less than a month later, I was buying my own syringes and hitting my own self. Sometimes I would stay in the room for days just shooting cocaine. We were making crazy money at this time selling $20 hits to a very faithful clientele. We had drawers filled with money, more than we could spend. We wore full length, handmade leather suits, $300 to $800 shoes, and exotic leathers like lizards and elephant hides. And we bought most of our coke from the Black Mafia out of Philly, at least until the big shootout at the Club Harlem at the breakfast show. We always kept a reserved table right up front for the breakfast show every week. We were buying quarter pounds of high grade cocaine for about $5,000 at this time, and we were making $200 a gram. There are 28 grams to an ounce, and there are 4 ounces to a quarter pound. We were buying about three-quarters of a pound a week. Life was good. You do the math. After that, I got busted. Lemony Snickets. I was charged with possession of a little over an ounce of cocaine. After several months, I was given a fine and time served and probation. I lost everything in California. And I was forbidden to leave the state of New Jersey. And that was when I got to see how strung out I really was. And on top of that, a young lady appeared and said that she was pregnant by me. It was possible, but highly improbable. So I asked her to get an abortion. And I told her that I would give her an additional $500 plus all the expenses for the abortion. She flatly refused, and I walked away. North Road and I had incredible coke habits at this time, but since we were no longer able to get coke from the black mafia, we had to constantly seek out other sources. Aaron had lost another business and was laying low, but occasionally he would get some exotic cocaine, like a rock pearl flake in pink, and we would buy some for our personal use, but his prices were just too high to profit from commercially. Necessity dictates priority, and we were driven by our addictions to the point of doing stick ups and burglaries. Wow. Shooting coke was like being bit by a vampire. You didn't want to change, but you had no choice. Putting that needle in my arm was the second worst decision I ever made in my entire life, second only to hitting my father. Wow. I left for New York. My sister Kim lived in New York, and I moved in with her. But she only had a one-bedroom studio. But still, it was very nice. But the living quarters were cramped, and I quickly moved out. However, she let me keep a key, so I would still frequent her apartment, especially when she wasn't there. She lived close to City College in Harlem on Hamilton Terrace, a section of Manhattan called Sugar Hill. Wow. I also ran into Solomon again. He too lived in Harlem and was running a numbers operation out of a bar on 149th and Broadway called Cecil's Lounge. We hooked up again, and he gave me a job as a numbers runner. He also found me a place to stay of my own on 149th Street between Broadway and Amsterdam. Solomon also put me back in touch with the remnant of the Black Panther Party. The new movement was underway called the Black Liberation Army. I was invited to join, and once again, I hooked up with Jimmy. But I had a bad feeling about things, and so I declined to join. And shortly after this, there was the Brinks robbery at Nyack. And then there was the murder of Officer Scarangella in Brooklyn. I met a man named Tulu Shakur, who was a very outspoken genius. He was the first doctor in the United States to propose acupuncture treatment for heroin addiction in the black community. It was cheap, effective, and had no adverse side effects. And his idea was co-opted by the government and implemented. You know, Mtula was later implicated in the Nyack robbery, and Jimmy was implicated in the murder of Officer Scarangella. Neither one of them will legally ever get out of prison again, I guess. So I guess I made the right decision that time. But there are all kinds of prisons, and I too had mine. Solomon also introduced me to Water. Water was a hustler who used to play the numbers with Solomon every morning. I was attracted to her right from the start. She and her party of con artists would work every day, various con games. They didn't get paid every day, but whenever they did get paid, it was spectacular. I was working as a security guard at NBC Studios at this time, 30 Rockefeller Center, and Water moved in with me. And one day when I came home from work, Water had dinner already ready, and she asked me if I wanted some cocaine. I loved cocaine, and she loved heroin, and we both loved methadone. She gave me $200 to buy some cocaine, and after we bought our drugs, I had only spent $50, by the way, and she asked me if I loved her. Now, this was a first, and I said, yes, I do. And she told me to go look under my pillow, and there were 8 $100 bills there, plus the other two she had given me earlier. That was $1,000. She said, I love you too. Life was good. But everybody kept telling me, don't get it too attached to Water because her old man was due to get released from prison soon. Now, his name was Peanut, and he had turned Water out when she was still a teenager. He used to beat her a lot, and anybody else that got in his way. She also had a son by him. Still, I refused to budge when Peanut got released from Ossining or Sing Sing. I let him know that it was her choice. Everybody thought I was crazy, but he didn't hit her. And if he had her, I would have hit him. Nevertheless, she was a natural born hustler and tried to play both of us. God always has a way of letting me see what I need to see in order to make good choices, even though I don't always make them. I was on the bus on my way to the tennis court when a car pulled next to that bus at a red light. It was a gypsy cab containing water and peanut. The cab dropped him off at a motel a couple of blocks from that light. She never saw me, and she later denied that she had seen Peanut. Needless to say, that was the end of our love affair, but I still loved her a lot. There's a tennis court in Harlem at 151st and 7th that they call the Jungle. Now, this is where all the best black players go. A lot of the professionals would show up there too, like Dorothea and John McEnroe, Arthur Ashe. They would all pass through there. And I started playing there every day. And I quit my security job at NBC, 30 Rock, you know. And I started hustling on the tennis courts every day. I also entered a lot of tournaments, and I made it to the quarterfinals of almost every tournament I ever entered. I was a natural, and I was given the nickname of the Wall. I patted my game behind Bjorn Borg, and I didn't hit especially hard or do anything spectacular or dynamic, but I always consistently brought back the ball every time. That's how I got the name of the Wall. One day I saw a beautiful black woman hitting on a wall in the back of the tennis courts. She had two little kids hitting beside her. They were all dressed alike in yellow and white. Every day they would be there hitting on the wall, but never on the courts, always on the wall. Eventually I asked her to play with me, and she was in shock. She didn't think that she was good enough. But I did, and so we hit, and we both had a great time. Her children were very well mannered, and every day I would come back looking for her, but she was never there anymore. I remember she told me that she lived in the projects next to the tennis courts, but that project contains a lot of houses and nobody seemed to know who I was talking about. I became obsessed with seeing her again. I loved seeing her. So I went through the entire projects just screaming out her name, Ravenisha. Eventually, a woman came to the window and asked me who I was looking for. And I described Ravenisha to her and her children. But I didn't even know her last name. The woman asked me what I wanted her for. And I told her how I had met her and how I had wanted to see her again. And the next thing I know, Ravenisha was in the window next to that woman. That woman was her mother, and they both were smiling at me. Ravenisha came down and we talked and we laughed a lot and we talked some more. And from that moment on, we became inseparable. Little did I know that she would soon become my wife. Life was good.